Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this part we will continue in our modeling part of our project example here, and in this part we will model our doors and export and import them inside our project example inside Unreal Engine 5. So let's get started. So we'll start by modeling the door. We'll first hide the outdoor walls and also the bathroom. And let's pick this point and let's drag our 3D cursor here by pressing shift and right click, and then let's add a single vertex to start our modeling of the door that is composed of three parts. That's the frame, the door itself, and the door handle. So we'll press 1 to enter into vertex mode, E to extrude along these three corners, and then 2 to select all the edges by pressing A, and then Control E, offset extrude, which is an add-on we have installed in our previous tutorial. If you have missed this one, we will add a link in the description. So extrude it internally by 2 centimeters, and then let's select the outer edges, and then Control E again. Let's extrude this to about 7 centimeters, and then let's select this one to add an internal part that will be useful later on. Alright, so we're gonna select these faces, extrude them outside by on the y-axis. Let's give it a value of 2 centimeters also, and then we want to mirror this to the other part of the wall, and we're gonna do so by first picking up the midpoint between this wall. So we're gonna select the skirt over here, go to vertex mode, wireframe to see these two vertices, then head to our BDT and place our 3D cursor in the middle of these two vertices. And then we're gonna select again the frame that we have started to model, set the origin to the 3D cursor, add a modifier, a mirror on the y-axis, and then what we need to do is to extrude this part of the wall so we can get the frame thickness inside. So we can easily do that by pressing Alt A and selecting all these edges, then hit Control, press faces, and it will select all of these faces. So if we extrude now on the y-axis, now we can see that they are actually not stopping both of these frames when we extrude them. So we easily fix this by hitting clipping, then extrude, and when these edges snapped at the center of this point, they will stop. Okay, so next we're gonna need to close this frame, so I'm gonna apply the mirror modifier. First let's go outside the edit mode, apply, let's select these faces, shift D, or we can go into separate mode immediately, so P to separate that selection and make sure we are selecting them, and G on the y-axis using the snap, we can snap them to this part. We still have an inner part, so we can use that part also. So I'm gonna select the edges again, hitting Alt, Control, selecting these guys, so separate them, select GY at this part. Now our frame is almost done. What we need to do is select all the faces that we have created, isolate by hitting the slash on the numpad part, and then go into edit mode, or first we can join them all together by hitting Ctrl J, then into edit mode, select all the vertex, right click, merge vertex by distance, and this will make sure that we don't have any separated vertex. Now it is really important to delete the unnecessary faces that will not actually be needed, or because they are not be visible inside our model inside Unreal Engine. So we're gonna remove all of these faces. This is gonna be also helpful in the time of unwrapping the model. So these faces also are unnecessary. And now the last step is to add a space for the door, and this by removing this part that we have created earlier, if you remember. So I'm gonna select these faces, these three faces, and then I'm gonna delete them. The same goes for this part actually also. So I'm gonna again select this edge, pressing Alt, Control, select all the faces, and then I'm gonna select the inner part with the edges by pressing Alt and Control E again, offset extrude, and we're gonna extrude them inside by 1 centimeter. And then we're gonna extrude them outside on the y-axis by using the snap to that part. Now again, let's select all the vertex and merge these vertex together by distance. Alright, so now let's create our door, and the door will be placed at this part, at this inner grooving part. So I'm gonna select the edges again, pressing Alt and Shift D, P for separation. And let's select this shape, press Tab to edit into edit mode, 1 for vertex, W to select my rectangular, F to close the shape, A to select all the vertex, F to extrude that shape. Now, let's isolate these guys together, and let's extrude our door by this value, and let's select the edge to add a little bit of details to that door, hitting Ctrl R to add more segments. Let's add, for example, 5 part, and let's add a little bit of a chamfer by pressing Ctrl B. Let's give it a value by 2 millimeters, and let's select these faces, and let's extrude them by going to the extrude along normal, and we can extrude them also by 2 millimeters. Okay, so now we have the door and the frame. Last thing is the door handle. So we're gonna place the door handle at this part. So we need again to place our first shape by identifying the center part of this part between these two vertices. So I'm gonna go to wireframe, select these two vertices, and again using the BDT add-on by pressing 50%, I'm gonna add plane. Let's give it a value of, for example, 5 centimeters, and let's rotate it on the x-axis, and let's go into front mode by pressing 1, G to move it. Let's move it by 5 centimeters, for example. So I'm gonna extrude this on the y-axis, let's say, and then let's insert this to create more details for the next shape. Let's add another segment here. Now when we have our section line not really having all the vertex not on the same level, now we can easily select all the vertex, select all the vertex, press S to scale them on the Z axis, and then find the value that will be 0 on the Z axis, and now they are all in the same level. Now let's go into the face mode, select this face, extrude. Let's extrude it, for example, on the Y axis to a value 0.04 millimeters. Let's divide this again just to create another details. S Z axis, and this 0. G to move it down a little bit, this part, select that face, extrude it outside a little bit. 3 millimeters is enough, and extrude this part on the x-axis by minus 10 centimeters. Now you can see that we need to push this back a little bit, so I'm gonna go into wireframe mode and select all of these vertices, and on the y-axis let's push it back by 2 millimeters, for example, or 2 centimeters. Okay, let's add a mirror also to that door handle. So first let's assign the origin of that handle in the middle. So I'm gonna choose the door, go to wireframe, select for example these 2 vertices, and assign the 3D cursor at the middle, at the center of this part. Select the door handle, right click, set the origin to the 3D cursor, and let's mirror this on the y-axis also as well, and let's hit apply. Okay, now the last thing we need to add is the small details on this part of the frame. As you all know, most of doors frames in real life have this groove. So I'm gonna go into edit mode, select the edges, press Alt, select all the edges, Alt and Shift to select all the other edges, Control B to bevel them up, but as you can see there's a problem, and it's definitely the face orientation, which is the normals. So we need to flip this up, and let's start by the door handle. Go into edit mode, A to select all the faces, make sure you're in face mode, Alt N to flip next, which is this part of the frame, and we can select this easily by pressing this edge. Selecting this edge, press Alt and left click, then Control again to the face selection, and Control plus until we reach to all the other faces, and then hit Alt N to flip. Now this one we don't need to flip, sorry about that. Okay, so if we go back to our door frame, let's select again the edges, hit Control B to bevel them. Let's give it a very small value. Let's go 0.002, or maybe actually less than that, and let's extrude this internally, this value, which is enough, and that's it. Next step, let's unwrap this door. So we're gonna go into edit mode, so let's select first the frame. Now if we go to the face mode, I'm gonna select this, and as you can see we have our these faces are unwrapped in this direction. We have created an 8 texture for the unwrapping to make sure that we have enough pixel density. Then let's select also this one. We need to hit Control and plus to select all the other faces, Control to deselect these faces, and let's unwrap this also as well, G to move it on this direction. Now let's select them all, scale them down a little bit. Let's see how much is our pixel density for these guys at the moment. Calculate. So this is really enough for the texture to be clear. Now the last thing is we need to make sure that this part of the frame is aligned on the correct direction, because as you know the wood veneer texture details is going to go vertically, horizontally, then again back vertically. We'll make sure about this when we go to Quixel Mixer. Okay. Okay, so next is the door, tab mode, select all the faces, U, Smart, Unwrap, and we're gonna scale it down just to get enough details. So let's select all to know where we are. put it there. Now the door handle, select all, smart UV. Let's scale it down also at this part. So let's start taking advantage of this extra space. I'm gonna select the door handle to increase it a little bit, and even this part as well. Okay, so we have our door unwrapped. Next, what we can do is copy our door to the remaining part of the house. If we look at our floor plan, we have a bunch of door spaces that we're gonna copy this door and adjust its scale or its width using the edit mode and moving the vertex until it fit the door space in each space. So we're gonna copy the doors and come back after we finish. So after replacing all the other doors at their location, we can see that there are different scales of that door, but keep in mind we didn't actually unwrap the other doors also as well. We only unwrapped the first one, which we made a copy from, and then we added a material to the frame and the door and another material to the door handle. So let's export this to Quixel Mixer. So inside Quixel Mixer, after we imported our door and separate the door handle from the door and the door frame by two separate materials, we have created two layer set, and the first one is for the door. From our local library, we're gonna choose a veneer wood texture so we can see the details of that texture. Adjust the placement to tiling, and if you remember, when we unwrapped that texture, we said that we wanna make sure that the upper part of the frame to be a continuous for the texture details. So I'm gonna increase the X repetition a little bit, and then let's add more details to the texture by adding a solid color, and then create a mask stack on top of that. Adjust it so it can be only applied on a curvature, more specifically on the edges only. By pressing Alt and right click of the mouse, you can zoom in a little bit. So let's tighten this up and decrease the level a little bit. This is just a basic way to add more details to the texture. Let's increase also the normal of the wood texture a little bit. Let's make it 2, and let's add an imperfection on top of all of that. Brush metal, for example, just to give us more details. Let's make sure it's above that solid color, and let's make it tiling as well. Rotate it 90 degrees. Now if we activate the albedo, decrease the opacity a little bit, make it as a multiplier, and for the roughness, the more that we make it darker, we get better reflection on top of the door, but it's better to be in the middle of that, and also decrease the opacity a little bit. So this is a good start to have the door with this texture. Later on we can adjust it as well. Let's choose the door handle and let's add a solid color. So we first create the base for the metal reflection, and let's make sure that the roughness is set to black so you can see the reflection on that. And let's add again a brush metal effect on top of that. I'm gonna try to change the background HDRI so we can get a better result for the reflection. Zoom in a little bit from this side, and you can see that we need to increase the roughness a little bit, even on a solid color. Let's duplicate it actually, make the roughness much more brighter. Let's minimize it a little bit so it doesn't add as 100%. Okay, let's decrease the albedo a little bit also, make it more darker for this color also as well. Alright, so now that we have our texture ready to be exported back to Blender, we're gonna choose which part of our texture that we need to export. So I think everything except the displacement, and now we can adjust our texture type to JPEG so we can get a less size texture result. Make sure it's 8K and let's export it and assign it inside Blender. So we'll come back after the export is finished. So back to Blender, where we have our door ready to be textured. We're gonna go to shading panel and let's drag our albedo texture, select the door and then connect it to the base color. Let's give it a bit of a space here. So we can see that the texture is applied correctly. Let's drag the metalness, normal, and the roughness as well. Connect all of these guys so we can export it to Unreal Engine using DataSmith, and then adjust the material inside Unreal Engine as we did before. Don't worry about the reflection, we're gonna reduce that inside Unreal Engine, because the extra node that we can add and Blender, they will not be actually identified inside Unreal Engine. So albedo, metalness, roughness, and the normal as well. Alright, so now our texture is ready on the door, and a really fast way to match all the other doors with the same materials that we did for the first one is to select all the doors and then go to the first or the last selection, which is this one, and hit Ctrl L to add the same material from the last selection that we did. So if we go into the material preview, you can see that all of them now have the same material. Now, due to the adjustment and the vertex drag that we have done during the modeling process to match the other doors on this other spaces, it doesn't really seems affecting the texture as well, because it's just a little bit of a texture stretch on the model. So our doors are ready, and now we can export our model. Let's go into the solid mode and unhide our parts that we need to export. And now we can select all by pressing A and then file export as DataSmith to Unreal Engine. So inside Unreal Engine 5 we have imported our model after the export has finished. Now as you can see, the textures are not visible, and this is due to the normal issue that we always face. So what we're gonna do is go to the master material and then deactivate the normals by going to that normal texture. Sorry, this one. Deactivate the sRGB, save, and inside that just go drag this up, apply, continue, and we'll start to see some of the materials now are visible. Now we have actually lumen activated and we added only a direction light. Let's fix this first also. So go to the main material, browse for the normal map, and also deactivate the sRGB. Save. Just a small trick to move any of these nodes. Apply. And now we have all of our material are added. So we need to add a skylight using the Blueprint Light Studio that we have used while we exploring the lighting inside Unreal Engine 5. Now we understand that there is a lots of crashing happening when you start to drag the Blueprint Light Studio. And here's how you can fix this. So when you have a new project like we have here, from File, New Level, the first thing we can do is go to Edit, Edit Preferences, and inside the miscellaneous, deactivate the Update Blueprint automatically. And then go and type BB as a shortcut for the BP Light Studio, activate it, and then inside then inside the blueprint, what we need to do is delete the atmosphere blueprints and then compile. Then we can drag our blueprint inside our scene and start adjusting our HDRI as we used to do. So let's go back to our example. So back to our model here, let's type in PP for the Light Studio blueprint, drag it into our scene. Let's minimize the size of these arrows, 0.05, and let's drag another HDRI that we have imported and use the HDRI. Now to get a high resolution of the HDRI, you basically need to change the settings to no map and adjust the minimum texture size to the size of that HDRI, which is 4096 that we have downloaded. Now let's hide the direction light, head to the Blueprint Light Studio, make sure that we're using Skylight as an HDRI inside the cube map. And if we rotate our HDRI, we'll start to get the light based on the HDRI direction, which is really helpful in terms of ArcViz project. So it's always useful to let Lumen calculate the settings, and after activating the direction light, let's look at now at our cinema actor view, and maybe from that door. Let's maximize the size, and if we zoom in at this part, we can see that we have our door. Let's adjust the focus setting, picking up this part for example. Yeah, so let's maximize it. You can see now that we have a really detailed texture. So let's pick better point, and I think we have our doors modeled correctly and textured correctly. Now there's still some gaps, which means that we still have some part of our model that was not exported yet, but once they all are exported, we'll start to have everything filled and we will not see any gaps. So I hope this video guys help you and to some modeling skills inside Blender, and also apart from that the texturing and the export and also trying to solve this Blueprint Lite Studio issue. So if you have any question, please share it down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.